Good evening. I'm Lucé, and on dark and eerie nights like this, I can't help but think about Halloween. I'm so sick of Halloween celebrations being limited to a few weeks out of the year. That's why I created It's Always Halloween, a year-round podcast on which I'll dive deep into the dark history of our favorite horror-filled holiday. Each episode will explore one specific custom, fear, or fright, inspired by my own curiosity and listener queries. If you have a Halloween question you need answered or just want to share a Halloween memory, call my All Hallows hotline at 802-532-DEAD. Or you can write me an email at it'salwayshalloweenpodcast@gmail.com. Tune in if you dare.
Warning! This movie podcast actually discusses movies. Be aware that it may discuss any of the following elements: endings, surprise twists, unexpected cameos, and all manner of spoilers. If this doesn't appeal to you, then why listen to a movie podcast? Without further ado, please enjoy our feature presentation, The Shameless Picture Show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Shameless Picture Show. I am your host, Michael Vyers, and today I'm joined once again by my good friend, Lucé Tomlin-Brenner. Lucé is a filmmaker, comedian, writer, and podcaster. She also manages the beloved Los Angeles video store, Videotech, and runs Video Visions, a monthly cinema-inspired stand-up showcase that celebrates the weird and wonderful corners of film. How are you doing today, Lucé?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me back, Michael. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. And I forgot to mention I mentioned that you are a podcaster, but I didn't mention your podcast.
Which is perfect for this time of year. It's called
is.
It's Always Halloween, a year-round Halloween history and storytelling podcast. Now, we don't primarily focus on horror, even though on my Patreon I do horror screenings and talk about how they're connected to Halloween in general.
Yeah, every time I've popped into your podcast, I'm always just really impressed by the topics that you find all these interesting little corners. Because, like you said, I feel like there's a lot of people out there talking exclusively about horror movies, and that would be a very easy thing to do. But I appreciate that you love everything about the holiday.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many people who love Halloween for the traditions and the community aspect of it who aren't big, like scary horror movie people. There's a lot of people who also enjoy like the cozy movies that are a little more like hocus pocus, kind of that theme, not even
Yeah.
getting into anything even as scary as our film that we're talking about today. And I have always had I don't know, not passing, but I guess a non-expert level interest in history, a hobbyist interest in history, and I am most fascinated by how history, like of the world, intersects with traditions and culture and storytelling, and obviously film as well, and how all of those things contextually kind of fit together. So on the podcast, I like to explore all aspects of that. So, we go all the way back to the beginning of like antiquity and like where a lot of these celebrations of life and death come from and while they're important. And basically every tradition that we engage in today can be tracked back to at least 2,000 years. And even horror movies, you can track back to essentially like the Colosseum and watching people fight to the death and
Mm-hmm.
the bloodlust that we had then. And you can kind of track that through the shows, the theater that got, less violent realistically, but we are still kind of trying to find how to experience that excitement of the Colosseum. So I find that to be really fascinating, and kind of diving into history also helps you deal with the current moment a lot because you see how cyclical things are and the really good moments and the bad moments and how they kind of are very repetitive, and it doesn't make it okay, but it does give me some hope for things to come back around.
No, I love that. And you touched on something that I don't feel like is talked about enough when it comes to Halloween, and it's one of my favorite aspects about it. Actually, my favorite aspects about the quote unquote holidays, everything from Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and onward, is that cozy feeling, that nostalgic feeling. Normally, this time of year, that is the dragon that I am chasing. I'm chasing things
Absolutely.
that bring that nostalgia, and and I and so like I try to a lot of times tailor my the stuff that I'm watching, because I do like those more formative gateway horror films, those family friendly horror films, because they give me that feeling. I'm also a big fan of like old Gothic horror films for that same reason. But then just something as simple as, so you live in California, so it's hot by you all the time, or at least warm. um
Yes, definitely. Hot Halloween is my biggest issue with California. I love everything else about LA, but I just cannot bear being sweaty in October.
but so in Wisconsin we don't normally have that issue.
Right, yeah.
um
You get
However,
the snowstorms on Halloween sometimes.
yeah. However, we had a record high this year of 80 degrees in October,
Oof.
which is high for the Midwest.
Yeah,
And
that global warming is very scary.
I sent you those videos from the haunt that I went to, and it was such a surreal experience going to a haunted house in shorts when you
Oh
live
my
in the
gosh.
Midwest. So it's like
Then even more of an opportunity for something to graze your leg in a scary way.
yes, yes, and I've been thinking about that. It's like I've been up until this last week when it started getting chilly again. I've been just eternally bummed and because it hasn't.
Yeah, it's hard to feel scared when you're warm.
Yeah, but also like going back to this nostalgia thing, like the smell of radiators is a nostalgic feeling for
Mm.
me. Or you drive past businesses when, since the sun's going down early, and you drive past businesses that still have their lights on. Like we passed, there's a Girl Scout building by my house, and the lights were on, and I was like, oh, it kind of reminds me of like a parent teacher conference, and just like all these
Yes,
nostalgic feelings of the fall are
the
coming up.
fall.
Yes, so I
I
absolutely
can
get that.
completely picture that. Yeah, I really love that feeling. I always tell my listeners that if it's hot near them, that they turn on the air conditioning and then put your like fall pajamas on and get blankets on and try to and like put candles on and try to recreate that it feels cold outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I've taken a little break from the podcast this year because so much what we talk about is related to death, whether it is like ghost stories, urban legends, just the traditions around Halloween having to do with like saying goodbye to loved ones or the fact that the veil is thinner and we're closer to the spirit world. The podcast, while it's a very cheerful and upbeat community driven podcast, I have had this year where I've actually had to confront death over and over and over with just a
Hmm.
bad luck. A bad series of losses hit me, and I it took some of the joy out of the podcast for me. So we're on a little bit of a break, but I am making new episodes for this month and hopefully going forward. But man, it's crazy. People always talk about like how death will change your perspective on things, and it's not that I hadn't experienced loss before, but never at like the rate of like 6 people and creatures within like the span of 1 year.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I haven't watched the others since early last
Oh, I
Halloween.
hadn't even considered that.
Well, but I mean, I've seen this movie. It's one of the, a favorite movie where
Hmm.
you've seen it. I don't know. This could have been my 20 to 30th time. I saw it in the theater when it came out in 2001, and now it's been 24 years, and I watch it several times every year. So,
Fair
the
enough.
math on that. So I actually found it to be this is a very sad movie in general, but I found it to be sort of comforting in a way. I don't know. I think it helped me process some things, but I've been avoiding a lot of horror stuff and even
That
my
makes
podcast, which
sense.
I love. And I felt like this was a very nice, like, kind of transitional feeling back into the holiday for me. So I actually did have a really nice time watching it. But all of this to say, for new people to the podcast is still going. I just had to take a little depression break, and I encourage everyone to start listening to it from the beginning. Um,
That's actually
eh
that was my 2026 goal because I've picked up just random episodes here and there, but I've something I want to start doing is just kind of go back to the beginning and just experience it that way.
Yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be because especially because it's like, the history stuff that I do builds on each other, and then the call in I have a hotline and an email where people can call and write in, and then a lot of the episodes are patchwork, personal history, it's like we're building history of the modern age and not just taking stuff from thousands of years ago,
I
but I
love
do
that.
think, people's personal histories really matter, and especially we have listeners from all over the world, so we get to hear a lot of perspectives from people in countries that don't have the same tie to Halloween that we have, which is really interesting. So we're creating this really great quilt of memories, speaking of coziness, and I think people will respond to each other via these calls and letters, so it's nice to start at the beginning so you can hear it consecutively, like in the order that it happened, that it took place. Makes the most sense.
No, I absolutely love that, and I highly recommend everyone seek out this podcast and give it a listen. And I think you
Thank
all will
you.
enjoy it. I don't listen to many non-film podcasts, but it definitely has that cozy feeling that you want to. And part of it is because you're such an affable host and you make people feel comforted.
Oh, good. Thank you. Well, I think it's really nice to, my background is in comedy. I've been a stand-up comedian for 15 years and I've done improv for like 20 years and I teach improv, and so much of my life has been about telling my own stories and teaching people how to tell their stories and teaching people how to be comfortable on stage and that their perspective matter and their experience matters and how to tap into themselves creatively. And that means so much to me because I think we live in a society that deeply oppresses people's artistic and creative drive, and that we're all humans are built with that, and we need that to feel connected to our spirits, and I think when people have the hardest time in life, it's because that's been repressed or squashed out of them, or they're
Hmm.
socialized in a way where they feel like they can't access it or they shouldn't access it. And a big part of my life has been trying to help people, access that. And the thing that's fun about having the call in and write in aspect of It's Always Halloween is I feel like I'm giving a platform to people to tell their stories and their history that they wouldn't have otherwise. These aren't other performers. These aren't some of them are artists, but I would say 90% of my listeners are people with, non entertainment jobs. And so they're getting this equal opportunity to really reflect on their lives and see how important their personal histories are, and that they are just as interesting and valid as the types of histories that are preserved in books. And so many of my listeners are also queer and trans. Myself and my co-producer Pete Burns are also queer, and I think despite not talking about our personal lives on the podcast, I think just our viewpoint really captured a lot of people who also have similar backgrounds, which was really interesting, fascinating for me to discover that we reached the LGBTQ tr community without us even, advertising that.
Hmm.
But, like, a lot of marginal people, listen to the podcast and contribute to the podcast whose, voices and experiences have not been recorded in the same way that, more mainstream people have, and so I think there's a lot of value to that as well, and I think that's what helps make it feel, like, very cozy and connective, is that it's a place where every it's like what's fun about being a kid at camp where you're all sitting around telling campfire stories, it's like that ancient drive we all have to pass stories down. I'm very honored that I have the chance to kind of keep those stories, to be like the holder of those stories and continue to like pass them down through the art of like, podcasting, which really can be an art just like so many other forms.
Oh, no, it's absolutely beautiful. That's
Oh,
that's
thanks.
wonderful. All right, so before we move on to the others, there's one last thing I want to talk about because I feel like it is something that I'm seeing constantly promoted on social media. And if I lived in LA, I would love to come visit. Tell me a little bit about Video Visions.
Yes, oh my goodness. Well, when you do visit LA, you absolutely have to be on the guest list.
Oh,
Video
absolutely.
Visions,
I'll
yes,
I'll blow up
please.
your phone when I come to visit.
Perfect. Video Visions is a monthly stand-up show. I host it with my best friend, Ellie Racemore, who we make a lot of DIY films together, and she and I met doing improv 11 years ago, and I've been working together ever since. It takes place at my video store that I manage, Video Tech in Highland Park in Los Angeles. And every month we pick a theme. This month's theme is Fright Night, and the theme is always a movie, but that movie inspires all of the films that we pick. It's not just, the show is not just about the like theme movie. So, of course, since it's Halloween, October 23rd is our next show. Fright Night, we picked 6 movies that fit that theme, 6 clips. We will show these clips to our 6 comedians. They have no idea what the clips are, and then they have to improvise a stand-up set off of these clips.
Oh, that's
So,
amazing.
no one brings their sets, nobody does comedy that you see anywhere else. It's all stand-up inspired by movies.
That sounds so much fun. And how long have you been
It's
doing
super
this
fun.
for?
We had since last July, we had our year anniversary show in July, and in June we were written up in the LA Times as a one of 11 must do things during Pride Month. So that was really cool to have this coverage in the LA Times, and get to reach a whole new segment of people that way. And it's just it's the only comedy show at a real video store in Los Angeles, and it's the only improvised film based comedy show. So it's cool because once you see the clips of the films, you can rent those films that night if you haven't seen them and you're interested in them. We try to always pick very diverse genres and decades and filmmakers. So we'll have a couple of things in there you may have heard of, but we really try to surprise people also and challenge them. And so we get the cinephiles in there who maybe don't know comedy as well. We get the comedians in there that maybe don't know cinema as well. And I am trying to, cross pollinate, get my 2 favorite things combined. And then this month, because it's Halloween, I get to combine my 3 favorite things and also talk about Halloween as well. But it's very important to me that people have access to cinema, especially when we live during a time of really intense, like corporate fascism and monopolies that really do not give a shit if you have access to film, and everything has to do with like hoarding licenses. And
Hmm.
these companies aren't going to release titles if they're not going to make money for them. So
Yeah.
whether that be on physical media or on their shitty streaming services that don't have good aspect ratio or good scans of films, and you're not watching it the best way you could possibly watch it, they don't give a shit about us. Not everything is available streaming. You know what? There's like 20,000 some films streaming. And even at Videotech, we have over 40,000 titles. Like we have twice as much as what's available streaming. And so when people are like, oh, everything's out there, like that's
No,
a
it's not.
fallacy.
Yeah.
Like, just because you can't watch 20,000 films in your lifetime doesn't mean that 20,000 films is enough to have access to. Because what ends up on the chopping block is stuff made by marginalized filmmakers, stuff made by international filmmakers, low budget stuff, indie stuff, DIY stuff. People, everything used to be available on physical media, even like made for TV trash movies. But now, if it's like not making money, it just gets pulled, and then where do you ever see it again? And that's suppression of art, that's censorship, and we can't let that happen. We have to preserve physical media and spaces where we can pick stuff in a democratic way, not just have things fed to us by a robot. I think there's a lot of like accessibility politics to consider. I think streaming is good, especially for people who can't easily or safely leave their homes, or people who are maybe in more rural areas and don't have access to like more accessible towns, city centers. But that being said, these things can and should be coexisting together. There should be video stores in every town that has a city center. We need to be able to have gathering places where people can talk about art and not just have stuff spoon-fed to us. So that's very obviously very passionate about this. I've worked in video stores since I was 17. I've done that almost my whole life, more than half my life. So it really means a lot to me, and I've been trying to create a comedy show for a long time that I could, combine those interests and get to be very passionate and get people turned on to physical media in a way that isn't necessarily me just like preaching on a podcast, even though I
Mm.
will never get off the soapbox. But if people get to come into the video store, they laugh, they see how much fun it is to have access to stuff that's handpicked by real people that they know, instead of just a robot being like, if you like Notting Hill, you might like Runaway Bride. Not to knock those two films, but come on, I don't, we don't need that type of help.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And there's, like you said, there's a big issue with just art not being made available to people. And now
Yes,
with the streaming services even taking down their own properties,
exactly. Yeah.
like,
And changing them. I
and
mean, think about
changing
the
them.
way Netflix has changed parts of what's that TV show? 13 Reasons Why. There's
Hmm.
been various shows that they just change episodes or dialogue, and like we can't do that.
No.
That's not the future we want to be in.
No, and I'm on top of that, I do believe that every store, not every town should have a video store of some sort. But then, if you live in a town that doesn't have a video store, go to your local library.
Yes, thank you. I didn't mention libraries, but they do have such incredible, movie sections,
Yeah.
and we do need libraries are such progressive, accepting, inclusive spaces.
I'll before we move on to the others, I'll give everyone a little tip of what I do sometimes when I go to the library, and I don't know what I want to watch because it can be daunting when there's too many options. So I'll give you Michael's little tip of what he will do. He will utilize Google to just pick a random number and then a random letter. So then I have to just be in that section, and then I either pick something from there, or I will just randomize a number between 1 and 100, or and just pick whatever movie it lands on and take it home with me.
I love that, that's fun. So will you do both? Like, you'll do a random
Yep.
letter, and then you'll do a random number?
Yes.
I love that, that's fun. Is there, do you say you do that every time, or just when you are like, nothing's jumping out
When
at me
nothing's
today?"
jumping out at me, because sometimes I'll go there a lot of times with a purpose.
Mhm.
I've been canceling more and more of my streaming services. I'll pick them up, a month here or there to catch up on a couple things that I've interest in. But so sometimes it can, if I have to watch something for this show, or something like that, then it's not always available. So I check the local library, and sometimes when I'm there, I'll always try to grab something extra, something different, and I just like to pick something random because I know myself. We're creatures of comfort, and we're creatures of habit, and there's a good chance I'll grab something that I know
Mhm.
over something that I've never heard of. And actually, the most recent example of
Yes,
that,
good. This was my follow-up question.
let me see if I'm struggling to remember the title. Let me check my letterbox since I have it up. The last time I played this game, I went to the library and I grabbed the movie Love and Mercy, the movie about Brian
Oh, I
Wilson.
love that movie. Yeah, Brian Wilson's
I
life.
and I, I wouldn't say I would have never have grabbed it on my own, but I didn't know it was about Brian Wilson originally. The title was, it's
The
kind of an
title's cheesy.
yeah, and then like I'm not the biggest John Cusack fan. Like I think he ebbs and
Shocking. I don't know if I've ever met anyone who's ever said that before.
I love him to a certain point, and then I just think
Mhm.
he's kind of going on autopilot sometimes. But
I don't
I
know if he's made a lot of interesting new work.
Yeah, like I said, I like him a lot when he was younger and hungry, but when I saw like, oh, contemporary John Cusack, but also Paul Dano, so and Elizabeth
Right, oh, I
Banks.
mean, and they're great.
Yeah,
I think that's a great combination of those 2
that
actors.
was my random movie from the library was Love and Mercy, and I adored that movie. So
Good. I also adore that movie. I'm a big Brian Wilson and Beach Boys fan, so I did see it in the theater thinking that it would be sort of dumb because in general I don't like music biopics, but I will watch most of them at the same time because I'm like, well, I do want to know more about this musician, or just sometimes it's kind of fun how formulaic they are. They're sort of like rom-coms,
they're
but
comforting in that
they're
way.
comfort they're rarely, like, good though, but Love and Mercy blew me away. I thought it was extremely well done without being, like, maudlin since it has a lot of
Yeah,
difficult emotional subject matter, and I thought they portrayed mental illness and schizophrenia in a very, what's the word I wanna use? Compassionate,
and
thoughtful,
understanding.
grounded way.
Yeah,
Understanding? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I also thought the movie was just amusing too, because like on most days, on most days Beach Boys fans are gonna say fuck Mike Love, but when you after you watch this movie, you're gonna say fuck Gene Landry and
Mhm.
Mike Love.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So if you're in the Los Angeles area and you can go to Videotech, try my little game. To find something random, or if you have a video store or a library by your house, just give it a shot. And worse, I often say I'd much rather take a chance on a bad movie than a bad book, because a bad movie,
It's
it's
over in
hour and
2
a half.
hours.
Yeah, hour and a half to 2 hours, and you're Dunyan rings.
Yeah, I was just talking to my husband Isaac about this. I cannot handle a bad book. I will usually get through almost any movie. I've stopped a few, but I'm always holding out for the movie to turn around. But a book that's written poorly, it makes me furious.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't. I can get lost. If I'm not grabbed by the first chapter, I'm done.
Absolutely. All right. So, unless there's something else you wanted to add about Video Visions, Videotech, or your podcast, I think this is a good transitionary period to get to the movie.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, you can everybody, well, I'm sure I'll do this at the end, but LTB Comedy is my Instagram. So everybody can find all the details about It's Always Halloween and Video Visions and Videotech on my Instagram. I'm very active there. So I post about all those and all the other shows and
Yeah,
podcasts that I
because
do around
you
LA.
you do a lot. You do a lot. Like the whole reason I first discovered who you were was because you were guesting on a podcast.
Yes, screen drafts, right?
Yes,
Yes, I mean, film podcasts are my
I'm
favorite.
still hoping that one day I can get the ear of the powers that be and get me and you on a Vincent Price draft. That's still my goal.
I know, I can't believe they haven't done Vincent Price yet.
No,
So
and granted, I'm nobody, so emailing them doesn't mean anything. But
I know, they have,
I'm
like, a
constantly
very
trying.
specific system that I can't figure out what it is.
Well, maybe you could throw a suggestion in. Anyways, tonight we'll be discussing, and we're probably going to mispronounce his name. We'll be discussing Alejandro Amenábar's The Others, released in 2001. Set in the aftermath of World War II, the film follows Grace Stewart, played by Nicole Kidman, a devout mother raising her 2 light-sensitive children in a remote mansion on the Isle of Jersey. As Grace becomes convinced that their home is haunted, her faith and sanity begin to unravel, leading to one of the most memorable and haunting twists in modern horror. Amenábar, who both wrote and directed the film, crafted The Others as a gothic ghost story in the classic tradition, full of atmosphere, restraint, and quiet dread. The film was shot with muted tones and natural light, emphasizing isolation and an ambiguity over spectacle. Critics praised its elegant storytelling and Kidman's commanding performance, with many comparing it to the psychological horror of The Innocents and Turn of the Screw. The Others was a critical and commercial success, earning over $200 million worldwide on a modest $17 million budget. It became one of the highest-grossing Spanish co-productions of all time and swept the Goya Awards, winning 8, including Best Film and Best Director for Amenábar. Kidman also received a Golden Globe and BAFTA nomination for her performance, and she won a Golden Chainsaw Award from Fangoria. So I just like to imagine that Nicole Kidman has a Golden Chainsaw Award.
Yeah, hopefully it's the most prominently displayed one in her
It
house.
should be. With its slow building suspense, emotional resonance, and masterful twist ending, The Others stands as one of the most enduring ghost stories of the 21st century. From 2001, written and directed by Alejandro Amenábar, this is The Others.
Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. As you can see, the housework has been rather neglected since the servants disappeared almost a week ago.
Do you mean they just vanished?
Into thin air. Perhaps I should introduce you to the children.
How do you do, children? I'm your new nanny.
Are you going to leave us too?
Why should I leave you?
The others said they wouldn't, but they did, and then it happened.
My children sometimes have strange ideas, but you mustn't pay any attention. Children will be children.
Why have you opened the curtains? It was Victor.
You told your brother that there was someone else in the room.
There was.
That'll do, Anne.
What is it?
I've seen them too. Sometimes the world of the dead gets mixed up with the world of the living. Sooner or later, she'll see them. Then everything will be different.
There were voices, a boy and two women, and they were
Mummy.
talking together.
Mummy, look. This is the father, this is the mother. This is Victor, and this is the old woman.
What do these numbers stand for?
That's the number of times I've seen them.
What do you want?
They're everywhere. They say this house is theirs.
No! Children!
Come here!
Run!
Can't you hear it? There's someone there.
Sooner or later, they'll find you.
Where is my daughter?
Are you mad? I am your daughter.
So, like I said, this was my first time seeing the movie. And you saw this theatrical, you said, correct?
Yes, yep. I went with my friends. It's PG-13, and this
Is
was
it
like,
really? For some reason, that's
yes.
shocking to me.
I know, but there's no swearing, and there's no blood. It deals with dark subject matter, but
That's
even
fair.
the movie it gets compared to the most, 1999's The Sixth Sense, is more violent than this movie, and
You
that's
are
PG-13.
You're absolutely. I guess I just figured because of just the dread that is throughout this film, it would
hmm
have been at least rated R. But
Well, it has such adult topics in it, like
yeah,
it is, and I think, we should say from the top that this has several reveals that happen throughout the movie, and so much so that I think this movie rewards repeated watchings. That being said, if you haven't watched the others, you should watch it before you listen to this
yeah,
episode
we're
because
gonna
there's really
spoil
no
it.
way there's no way to talk about it without talking about the entire plot. And while I do think that I don't typically believe in spoilers because I think films typically speak for themselves and not just
Thank
one
you.
plot point.
Thank you.
But this film specifically really hinges on not knowing what's going on. And I think it would lose a little bit of the luster for the first time viewer. So I would want everybody to watch it first and then come back and listen. But it was really compared to, unfavorably at the time, people my age, like teenagers, we were just going to see all the PG-13 horror movies. It was such a great time for that, the late 90s, the Y2K times, basically. So when I was in junior high and high school, I saw everything that came out between like 98 and 2005, I feel like. If it was a PG-13 horror movie. Um, all that to say, I loved this movie from the get-go. I was scared the entire time, but I was with a big group of friends and people were like, thought it was boring. They thought it was too much like The Sixth Sense, and I just have
Oh, I think
never
this is
related to
so
that. I've
much
spent
better than The Sixth Sense, and I
Oh,
like
I
The Sixth
know.
Sense.
I like The Sixth Sense. It's a completely different movie,
Yeah.
um, but, you know, if you are kind of ahistorical with films and you don't have a lot of, like, background, which most teenagers
Hmm.
don't, it's like, yeah, I mean, you could also say it's just like The Innocents or it's just like The Haunted. Like, yeah, it's a gothic ghost story, and it has a lot of influences that it pulls from, just like every single film does, and the fact is that while they were making the others, The Sixth Sense came out, so there was,
Hmm.
like, fear around that for Amenábar, but he like pushed forward because he knew he was doing something very different. But it's not like at the time people acted like they made this movie to bite the style of The Sixth Sense, which just wasn't, they weren't
No,
connected at all.
no. This movie's got such a specific tone, such a specific look to it. Like this is thoroughly through and through a gothic horror film, and that got like,
Absolutely.
and maybe listeners out there won't be as familiar with gothic horror films because they're not in vogue as much as they once were. Um, but they usually had a slower pace. I would say they're kind of the originators of the slow burn aesthetic because there was oft like I'm currently watching the '60s Dark Shadows television show, and
Oh,
and
fun.
I described it to a friend of mine, and they're like, "Well, what's it about?" It was like, "Well, the early show is gothic in that you don't know if when they're talking about ghosts living in this house if they mean literal ghosts or if they're being cheeky and just talking about memories of the past." And that's kind of where these films lie. They're ghost
Exactly.
stories that don't reveal that they're actually ghost stories until a certain point. They're slow, they're plotting, it's about theme, it's about pace, it's about atmosphere. And this film has all of that in spades. And it also hit me just at the perfect time too, because the fall, as I mentioned to you before, is when I want to watch these films. Vincent Price is my favorite
Hmm.
actor of all time. Him and
Yes, same. We've bonded over that
yes,
before.
and he was the king of these type of movies. He wasn't the only one making them, but obviously, but
But yeah, especially like the Corman cycle that they,
yeah.
did the Edgar Allan Poe adaptations together.
Yeah, just like I love a big creepy house. I love lots of fog and mist, and I love letting a story unravel itself. Like something as simple as just these interesting curiosities when the movie begins, when we first are introduced to the house and we're introduced to Nicole Kidman's character, and she's very particular about keeping the shades closed. And every door, you need to close every door before going through another door. And it's like, oh, there's something interesting here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up such a good point here because the Gothic horror novel, that was really kicked off by Mary Shelley, kind of founded
Mm-hmm.
the genre when she wrote Frankenstein. It's a 19th century genre. And when see these, like, if people are familiar with the illustrations of like pulp novels from the 50s and 60s that I feel like get passed around on Instagram and Pinterest of like a woman running from a castle holding a candelabra. These were like gothic pulp novels of the mid-century, and there were a lot of gothic films made in the 30s and 40s. Especially, of course, James Whale is making Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and Old Dark House, um, and Mary Shelley and Lord Byron and that group of people who got together and wrote together. That was a very queer group of people. And then James Whale, of course, was also gay. And so there's also this history of queerness in horror as well, and like what the castle represents, what the darkness represents, the like oppression, the marginalized feelings of the people trapped in the castle, what's being held and hidden underneath the dark. And the others is no different. There's a lot of, it starts from the beginning with religious imagery and a voiceover from Nicole Kidman, and the darkness in this movie kind of goes hand in hand with like a lot of the oppressive religious beliefs that Nicole Kidman kind of thinks are keeping her and her children safe, but are sort of doing the opposite. And what's interesting, you were saying about the lights and how the children are photosensitive and they need to move the curtains to make sure the light is always being blocked out. When I saw this movie as a kid, I did not really clock that it was taking place in 1945. And in the back of my
Mm,
mind, I always thought it was the 1900s because that's what Gothic is, right? You're in a big castle
yeah.
and they're in one of these big old manor homes, like you might have seen in like Downton Abbey. They're from a different time, but they're able to capture that like 19th century Gothic feel with this great conceit that the children cannot be in light that is brighter than a candle. So the whole time she's walking around with these oil lamps that are anachronistic for the time. And it's also post World War II. And she talks about how the Germans had occupied
Yep. I was going to
the
mention that.
yeah, the Channel Islands, and she has that great line, where she talks about how the Germans kept cutting off the electricity during the war, and they just learned to live without it, and she gets these horrible migraines, so the kids can't make noise, and there's no radio, and, she doesn't want any modern things that are annoying, and so there's this amazing, like, 3 or 4 conceits here that make it very natural that they're in this big, old drafty house walking around with not candelabras, which would be 19th century, but oil lamps that harken back to that style.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's interesting because the servants who end up coming, we discover that they are, in fact, ghosts, but that they died in the 1800s. So their style is slightly different in dress than her style, which is very firmly in the 1940s. So there is this conversation with the 19th century that's happening through
Yeah.
costume and hairstyle that I think is
And
is really interesting.
it's subtle too,
Yes, very
because
subtle.
like anyone who's out there who's a fashion or costuming nerd will
Yeah.
probably pick that out, but the style of dress is different, but they're similar enough that you're not questioning it. It's not like
It's not the
someone.
difference between, like, the Crimson Peak dresses and the
Yes,
1940s.
exactly. So it's similar enough. They just seem very proper, maybe a little kooky. It could also be a thing since they come as a group, and you find out
Yes.
later on why they come as the group because, as you said, they're actually ghosts, but they come as a group. So you almost feel like, okay, this is just the way that they dress for this job.
Right,
They
they're
just
servants, so they're not gonna
yes.
dress very elaborately, and they're older, so it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, maybe they're dressing in, like, a style that they're used to wearing. Older folks aren't gonna be trendy necessarily.
Mm-hmm. And like so just the way that this movie dishes out information, I almost feel
Mhm.
um it's insulting to say the movie is slow. The
Oh, absolutely. I
because
mean, the pacing is perfect.
yes, when I see reviews online for people saying it's slow, it's not slow, it's deliberate. Each
Mhm.
choice and when it plays out, like I would not be surprised if Amenábar, when he was writing this film, if he didn't have a very clear outline of when each piece of information was going to come out. And because you're watching this movie, and I didn't watch a trailer for it, so I remember when this movie came
Oh,
out 'cause
wow.
I remember this poster. Like, it's not a
Mhm. Her
very.
face
Yeah.
illuminated by the oil lamp.
Yeah, and the poster doesn't give you a whole lot. Like, okay, it's going to be a horror movie starring Nicole Kidman.
But it does harken to that Gothic style,
Yes.
though. She has that, like, white lady haunting face, which I love that she looks very pale and ghostly. It's almost foreshadowing without by also giving you nothing.
Yes. Um like so every piece of information is given to you at a very specific way, and it keeps you guessing. So like I knew, this is a horror movie, and I even knew that there was a twist because before I watched the movie, before when we had this movie planned, I said to my wife, "Is like, oh, we're gonna watch the others," and she goes, "Oh, is that the one where?" And then she spoiled the twist, but
No.
I have a terrible memory and I forgot it.
Oh, great.
So it worked out perfectly, but I knew there was a twist of some sort. So like as it was going on, I was like, okay, I'd occasionally look to my wife. I was like, okay, I have a theory, and then like I'd be like, okay, I have another theory. I don't know if any of these are right, but here's where I thought it was playing out. And even though I got a quarter of the way, I still didn't quite get that full twist.
Yeah, the way the entire story comes together and each piece of the puzzle fits is it's perfect while also leaving you with some unanswered questions that make sense because it's dealing with these major themes of like life and death and the
Yeah,
afterlife and what comes
but
next and
I
what
can't.
do we do with our belief system.
I love unanswered questions. I feel
I
like
like them when they're deliberate.
yes,
I do feel like there's like a modern issue of not following an interesting idea all the way through and being like, it's ambiguous. And I'm like, well, I needed a
yes,
little more detail here.
I do agree. Though I think there's also a this modern thought of where everything that you can't, everything that's not. There's so many people out there who believe that anything that's not explained to you is a plot hole, and that's not the
Yes.
case.
Yes, there's a balance, right? It's like when a movie has very deliberate like questions that it's asking you as a viewer, people say that. And then when stuff is left unanswered because it's poorly plotted, people will be
Hmm.
like, it's ambiguous. And I'm like, no.
Yeah,
There's like a middle ground. And I think it has to do with how connected you are as the filmmaker to the philosophy of the film and the story that you're trying to tell and the feelings that you want people to have. Like Amenábar wanted to make a classic ghost story. He didn't like how horror had been going in the 90s, like we were
yeah.
really coming out of a slasher, like the teen slasher cycle of the 90s. And he wanted to get back to the films that like inspired and excited and terrified him as a child.
And I think it worked so well because like this movie it does very little, but it pays off in a big way. Where, by the end of this film, if you are on this movie's wavelength, and I will say this movie won't be if you're not a fan of gothic horror, this might not appeal to everyone.
But if
But
you like a ghost story, I mean, this is such
yeah,
a classic ghost story. Like one of my
yeah,
favorite movies is The Changeling, and I didn't even know until I was
the
doing
Peter
some more
Medak film.
research. The George C. Scott one
Yes,
from, like yes,
yes.
yes.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Okay, it's incredible. So I didn't
Yes.
realize until this most recent round of research that Amenábar also loves that film.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
And get this, he talks about how the others in this film is about these ghosts that Nicole Kidman and her children start to hear and visualize and feel haunted by, and sort of the mystery trying to figure out who these others are. And one of them plays the piano at night and is a composer. And Amenábar was talking about how the others is sort of an inverse of the changeling because
Oh
the
my
changeling is
God, you're
about a
right.
composer who moves into the haunted house and starts communicating with the children. And he's like, it's from the opposite perspective.
Oh my God! Now I already planned to watch The Changeling this Halloween
Yes,
anyways,
it's
but
such a good
now
October movie. I always
oh
watch it every
now
year.
it's even better. Like
Absolutely. Yeah, I think they'd be a really great double feature together. The atmosphere and the changeling cannot be beat. So if you like movies like that are ghost stories, but not the types of like supernatural films that like James Wan makes. You can like both. I think James Wan's films are fun as like haunted house experiences. It's
yeah,
almost like it's like going to a haunted house where it's like boo, ah, and you jump and you feel tingles. And there's definitely a few genuinely frightening like moments in the others, but it's really about compounding dread and isolation and emotional terror. And I don't mean like trauma, like big T trauma and what we see in modern movies, but just sort of like the terror of being alive and having our belief systems challenged, and that feeling that you need to control everything. It explores a lot of philosophical and like poetic concepts. So
yeah,
you need to be in the headspace to kind of explore that kind of thing, or at least enjoy someone else making that exploration, not going into something like, I'm going to feel fucked up afterwards. Cause it's
yeah.
definitely not about being like scared,
No,
you know?
but that being said, there are some genuinely
Oh, I
creepy
think
and
this movie
haunting
is so
scenes.
scary.
Like this movie does like one. I will quickly say this before I say my next thing is if you're as I was saying before, if you're on this movie's wavelength, there's times where by the end of this film, my jaw felt like it was on the floor just because
Mhm.
the way once everything kind of came together, and like I didn't feel the need to do any like crazy ghost effects or anything like that. It's very
No, I think
simple.
why it works is that you don't see the ghosts.
Yeah. But then also this movie does something that's incredibly difficult to do where it has a phenomenal scare sequence in broad daylight and still has a jump scare. My wife knew it was coming and it still made her jump out of her seat.
Are you talking about the one where she's in the junk room?
Yes.
That is such a scary scene. This is like when Nicole Kidman's children have been telling her that there is something in the house and she hasn't been believing it. And this is the scene where she
She goes
actually starts hearing something and
yeah.
she
She goes
follows.
around the house with a shotgun.
Oh, it's amazing. Nicole
Yes.
Kidman, that's my notes say Nicole with a shotgun is everything.
Yes.
But the first time she picks up the shotgun, this is what I'm talking about. Like, this is a real film. This is an artistic film. A24 would or Neon would probably make it today,
Mhm.
When she picks up the shotgun, there's
Yeah.
this incredible moment of realization on her face where I think she knows the whole time that like what she did and is stuffing it down.
Oh, definitely. It
Um,
definitely feels like a trauma response.
right, but like, cause I should we just come out and say it?
Yes, yes. Real
Um,
quick, for those of you who have not listened to us, and we already spoiled one thing, if you have not seen this movie and you keep listening, I don't give a shit if you're upset with me for spoiling it. We warned you twice.
yes, this is the point in which it will ruin the overall experience, but if you don't want to watch it anyways, this will help give you context for the rest of our discussion. So the reveal at the end is that because her husband went off to war and left them alone in this pent up house as the Germans were invading, and the kids couldn't leave the house, and she was all alone and completely isolated, and she felt abandoned, she like went mad and smothered her children to death and then shot herself.
Yeah.
So this whole time you think, Amenábar does such a great job of putting you in their position, and you feel so much of their terror of being invaded and having their house invaded that you don't even realize that like they're the others, and the people in the house are the people who are trying to move in the house who are actually being haunted by Nicole and her children and the servants
Yes.
who died in the 1800s and who have been haunting this house for a while and who have been connected to this house for 50 some years now. And the servants this whole time are trying to like almost usher Nicole character and her children into like their new life as ghosts in this house. And Nicole has been very reticent. And you're kind of watching the story when you have that perspective is watching her come to terms with this horrible thing that she did. And so in the moment where she picks up the shotgun, there's this amazing moment of foreshadowing that you couldn't guess, I don't think, if you hadn't seen it before. But a look comes over her face that I don't think you can place it without the context, because you're like, oh,
Mhm.
she's starting to remember that she fucking killed herself. And it's like every moment she's trying to escape that memory is, I
Yeah.
think, really interesting. A lot of pathos to her character.
Oh, and then just like, like, even just thinking back on the movie, I was putting things together. Just the performances of the people who are working in the house for them. So Bertha and Mr. Tuttle, and I don't remember the other Lydia. And
Lydia?
yes, and like there's a very clear rip off the band-aid moment where they're like, okay, you are just being willfully ignorant now at this point.
Yes.
And what's so brilliant about their inclusion in this film is at first, because we're thinking about this film from the context of other horror films, and I feel like a lot of people probably went into this movie knowing it was a supernatural or ghost story of some sort. You're automatically pegging them for being sinister, especially because they're
Yes.
just they're a little too prim, a little too proper. Amenábar is playing with our expectations and genre expectations. with their performance, and even little things where, Nicole Kidman tells them to, tells Mr. Tuttle to go find if there's any tombstones on the property, and she's gonna go and go get the priest, and they're both like, the fog will keep her out, and like there is very much.
Very knowing.
Yeah, and then they're like, "Well, when are we gonna reveal this?" And then it just shows just a little bit of the tombstone,
Right,
and just
and then you don't
enough.
know what is his you think maybe they're hiding the ghosts that are in the house,
Yes,
but then
or
later it's revealed that those are their tombstones.
yeah. It's just so masterfully crafted.
Absolutely, and I love that you said that about Amenábar playing with expectations because he knows that you're going to be trying to fit certain things together, but he didn't wanna give it all away, so there's, like,
Yeah.
these different they're not they are sinister, but they are kindly at the same time, which I think keeps throwing you off your path when you're watching the movie because 'cause you're like, "I don't know these people, like, what's the motivation
Well, and then
of
there's almost
the
like this there's
housekeepers?"
almost like this wrestling happening between more so Mrs. Mills than Mr. Tuttle. Mr. Tuttle, I have to say, I said this to my wife before the whole realization that they're ghosts. I was like, Mr. Tuttle has the best job. He doesn't have to sit in the dark, and he can just be outside raking leaves. Like he has the
He is
best
raking
job.
this giant property.
Yes, like he's probably still raking that giant. Well, he is, but
Yeah,
um,
for eternity.
yes. But there's almost this battle between Mrs. Mills and Nicole Kidman's character Grace because they are like there's a power exchange going throughout this film. When we first meet Nicole Kidman's character, she's very authoritative, not in a bad way, but she has very specific things she wants things done. Almost in
Right.
a I know something about this house that you don't, especially when it's something as weird as you cannot leave a room without closing the door prior. It's almost like, what are you hiding? What is the reason for this? Why are you telling us your kids are light sensitive? It almost feels like she is hiding something. And, once again, playing with the genre expectations, our brain is like, there's a monster in this house or something. There's
Yeah,
some
well,
creature.
it seems like she's presenting the kids as monsters, right? Because the
Yeah.
movie starts for a good 15 minutes and we don't see the children. She's just talking about them in this very mysterious way.
Yeah. And then, but as the movie goes on and she starts to show more doubt, then that's when this quote unquote sinisterness of Mrs. Mills starts to come out, and then you start wondering, wait, is she the one who knows more? And and it even plays with those genre expectations in that it plays a convenience in a really fun way that I hadn't
Mhm.
seen since I had seen The Omen, where
Mm.
in this movie she's like, I was supposed to send this parcel out to get help. The mailman never picked it up. Why the fuck are you here? I'm paraphrasing. And Mrs. Mills like, well, we used to work here, or we saw this big abandoned house. I don't remember exactly which excuse she gave, but since she felt like we figured you'd need help.
Yes, she
And then
did say that she worked in the house
yes,
before Nicole Kidman's family moved
and
in,
like
which is also
that
foreshadowing.
was also like enough for her. She's like, oh, okay. And that reminded me of The Omen, where in The Omen, when spoilers for The Omen if you haven't seen it, when the nanny dies in The Omen and they have to get a new one, a nanny shows up and they're like, we never talked to the the nanny service. Okay, you can
Yeah, how
work
do you know
here.
we need a nanny?
Yeah,
But good thing you're here. You're saving us a step. It's like,
but
no, see, this is a good argument to never cut corners.
but on going back to something we were talking about prior, it never feels like a plot hole. It never feels like especially in the others where it's eventually explained. Amenábar handles it in such a way that it never feels it doesn't take the audience out of the moment. At least it
Mm-mm.
didn't for me.
No, I completely agree because also the performances are very grounded, which I think is
Yes.
interesting because another mark of Gothic films are that is melodrama,
Hmm.
and that's a really big part of it. And you see a lot of, Nicole Kidman's character Grace is a very hysteric, desperate woman And you see a lot of the hysteria in her eyes and the way she runs from room to room, and she fiddles with these big skeleton keys all the
Oh, the
time.
keys are one of my favorite props
Oh,
in this movie. Like if I could
oh, they're
have
so great.
if I could have any prop from this movie, it'd be those keys.
Absolutely, it's like Halloween. It's a big
Yes.
ring of keys with all these, like, giant prop-looking spooky keys on them. They're pure horror fuel.
Yes.
And she can't ever grasp them quite right because she's always freaking out about something, and if it's not the light, then it's a ghost, and if it's not the ghost, it's a child wailing, and she doesn't know whose child it is, and she's just always running around very upset, and she doesn't have anything to fill her days, right? And she's also being haunted by this memory of killing everybody, um, that we don't know about until the end. But I think one of the reasons that the beginning works so well, also where you kind of just accept that these people are here and they're here to help, and um, there's no music in the beginning. The music isn't introduced until like the children are introduced, and it just
I didn't catch that.
oh, it's amazing. You expect there's music in the opening
Mm-hmm.
title sequence, and then after that, it's quiet again. And, it really makes it feel, you're just like, "What's about to happen?" You're, like, leaning in, and it feels like, a real conversation. It puts you in her headspace, and she already looks frazzled when she opens the door.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a lot of really interesting sound choices. There's no surround sound in the film until the first time you hear Victor, which is the little boy that the children complain that they're
Oh yeah,
seeing
I
and
noticed
hearing.
that. I noticed that. 'Cause I'm a big home audio nut,
Same. Yeah, so
so
you can
I
hear
noticed that.
Victor behind you before
Yeah.
you hear it anywhere. You don't hear anything behind you until it's Victor's voice, and it's really scary.
Yeah, I love that, and then the way that it does use the way the sounds almost move throughout the room.
Mhm.
Um, had
Yeah,
the early two
it was
thousands, they were really getting creative with sound design.
I know, I love that. I that's, like, one of my biggest problems with horror movies is that I feel like a lot of times they just use sound to, like, goose you,
Yeah.
and I think it's really lazy, and, Amenábar also edited no, he did the music.
Yes, I noticed that in the credits.
Yeah, so, like, he was very this is what's so great about films that people write and then direct, like, filmmakers who are they're truly doing the whole package is and, he storyboarded the whole thing shot for shot exactly what he wanted, because I think they were waiting for Nicole Kidman to finish up with Moulin Rouge, and so they had some time, and he was like, "I've never done a storyboarding this exact before, but I was just, like, waiting for her to come over," so, it's all very exacting, and he really got to, like, make his vision come to life in a way that sometimes I feel like when people are directing other people's scripts, like, I don't know, it's like it hasn't lived in their head quite as long as when someone's directing something that they wrote, you know?
This feels like a passion project through and through.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And oh man, we were talking about foreshadowing earlier. There's so much interesting foreshadowing with dialogue. Like, at one point they find the postmortem photography when she's in that
Yes.
creepy room with all of
Yes.
the shrouds, she's in this old junk room looking for the others, and it's all stuff for old furniture covered in sheets, but it's basically like she's surrounded by classic looking ghosts or death shrouds, and
Oh, I love the real quick. I just love the running gag throughout the movie where little girls like where Anne's like, it's not ghosts. Ghosts are covered in sheets and chains.
yes, it's very A Christmas Carol.
Yes.
Like I just kept thinking of Marley.
Yes. I had that thought too. Every time she mentioned sheets and chains.
Sheets and chains. So of course, yeah, that imagery is in the junk room, and Grace, Nicole Kidman's character, is almost haunted by her daughter's own words. And while she's in that room, she finds a photo album of postmortem photography, and she doesn't know what it is. She thinks everybody's sleeping because this was not popular in the mid-century. But Mrs. Mills comes in to tell her that actually those people are all dead, and she's so horrified by it and thinks she says this is macabre. She doesn't even want the album she doesn't want to see it anymore. She wants it taken away,
Ooh,
which is like,
And real quick, I just want to mention one of my favorite transitions in this movie came after that moment when she was like, "I get rid of this," and then it does the slow dissolve to the fire, alluding to that. Oh, Mrs. Mills probably burned it, or it's making the audience feel like she burned it, and she
What a great
didn't.
point.
But
Yeah.
I just because it's showing, I think it's like it's on one of the photos, and then it cross dissolves into the fireplace, and it's just one of my favorite moments in this movie.
Oh, good catch. Oh, I love that. That's what this film does so well. There are these moments that fill in the blank. It makes your mind go, "Oh, that's probably what's happening," when you're not actually being told what's happening. But there's this great line where, Grace is asking Mrs. Mills why anybody would do this. And Mrs. Mills said, "Grief over the death of a loved one can lead people to do strange things." Which I never thought about that much until this viewing, and then I was like, "Oh, yeah, like you killed yourself and your children because your husband didn't come home from the war,"
Yeah.
you know? And there's, the time where Anne is, like, breathing in, like, this really anti-authoritarian way. She's
Oh,
mad at her mom, and
yep.
she's, like, huffing and puffing, and Nicole Kidman tells her to stop breathing, like, multiple
Yeah.
times.
Oh yeah, we I caught that. And then that also has a really nice callback later on in the closet between
Yes,
Nick and Anne,
Nicholas.
Nicholas and
Yeah, her
Anne.
brother.
Yeah, that has a nice callback later on that I think is just very wonderfully done, where, she essentially calms his breathing, but there's still heavy breathing happening in that closet.
Mhm. Yeah, that's an incredible scene. That's one of the very scary scenes that I remember so clearly seeing that in the theater, and me and all my friends, we were sitting in the back row, we all screamed, when the 2 kids are in the closet because a really scary old woman's face pops in to the closet, but it's basically this reveal. This is when you're starting to find out that the kids are ghosts because you get this great scene of this other family you've never seen before hosting a seance.
Yes, that the seance reveal, because like the way this movie played out when we first found out that the workers in the house, Mr. Tuttle and Mrs. Mills, when you found out that they're ghosts, and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's a cool
That's the
tool.
reveal,
and
yeah.
and it almost, not gonna lie, it was like, oh, that's it, okay. But then the
Yeah, because it
reveal,
doesn't necessarily answer any questions, but
yeah,
other than, like, why their behavior is so strange, but then you're
yeah,
like, "Okay, so why are they trying to fuck with them?" Because you think for sure that it's the servants trying to fuck with Nicole
yeah.
Kidman.
But then that reveal of the seance, like the
Mm.
second they walked out and saw the family and they're around that circular table holding hands, like I instantly was like, oh, that's the classic seance
Which
look.
also speaks to the Changeling, because there's a
Yes.
couple really famous seance scenes in that as well, and they're at that point, you can see what a good job Amenábar does getting you onto Nicole Kidman's side, because we know that children have interacted with the others a few times, but she's never quite been able to see them, maybe just hearing them in the distance. But she walks into this room that's her children's room, and suddenly her children's bed isn't there. There's no puppet, no like little puppet theater there. It's a totally differently designed room.
Mm-hmm.
And she is now seeing the way that things are,
Yep.
that
And
they're
then
living.
the kids are saying things, and then it's being repeated back at the seance. Oh, it's just
With through automatic writing, which is
yes.
very cool. And I really love this scene because it just gives it's up to you whether the listener, you believe that communication with another realm is possible, but we don't know how it works, if it works. And I think this is the first time you visually get to see how a seance and communicating with another plane of existence could work. And it makes it so plain and normal feeling, even though it's such a jarring, sad scene because you just can't believe that these kids are dead, but you see that it's like this old woman asking questions and the kids whispering to her and talking to her, and all of a sudden sort of the fear of like, oh no, a child's ghost talking to me sounds like the scariest thing in the world, but you've spent all this time with these children. They're not scary child ghosts anymore. It I don't know, it brings a reality to hauntings and seances and the supernatural that um I don't know, I thought was very I can't find my words. I just thought it was comforting, and it was also very, artistically done and very realistic, even though it's dealing with metaphysical stuff that
Mm-hmm.
it has no scientific or spiritual explanation or, there's nothing to say one way or the other whether
Yeah,
this exists or not. It made it feel very real, which I thought was very impressive because it's not like a woo-woo film. It's a very grounded film.
absolutely. Now I know you don't have a whole lot of time, so there's something I do want to bring up. Christopher Eccleston's character before we
Yes, we
wrap
haven't
up.
talked about the
The
father.
father, because there's a couple different theories that I'm wrestling with, and you who have seen this movie so many times, I want to know which wavelength you're on.
Yeah, let's
So
talk about the father.
so when the father was first introduced, before you find out any of the twists, you're like, oh, he found his way home, and then he's leaving again, going back off the war. And then after the reveal of the twists of the film reveal themselves, my initial thought was he's also dead. He died at war, and he's coming home to say goodbye. But since he didn't die there, he can't stay there. That was my initial thought.
Hmm.
But now I'm wondering. I just thought of this while sitting here. He could be alive, and
Hmm.
he came home. He came home to say goodbye to them, and either was interacting with their ghosts or something. Because even little things like they were trying to feed him and he wouldn't eat. Can he even eat anything that they give him? Like, I don't know. I don't quite know which, if I respond more to that he died at war and he needs to go haunt the area that he died at, or that he could still be alive and they're dead.
I definitely think that he's dead because of the way that he and Nicole's character, Grace, find each other in the fog.
Mm-hmm.
Because we talked earlier about how she tries to leave the house to find a priest to come back and bless the house, but she gets lost in this amazing fog, which, by the way, is a combination of real fog and digital fog. That they use to kind of fill it in, but it just looks so good. The fog
The
effects in this
fog in this movie
movie.
is one of the best looking fog movies.
Absolutely, and I think it's because it does have that, combo, to it, and I think it's what, to me, is one of the reasons I do love to watch this movie in October and makes this a Halloween movie, even though it is suspended in time. You don't know what time of year the film's taking place, but the fog is gorgeous, and there's this scene where she's just walking further and further away from the manor home and deeper in the fog until she's completely lost and turned around, and while she's out there, she runs into her husband who, it's 1945, the war's been over for a year, and she keeps telling the kids that he's still off at war, but she probably knows he's dead,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no reason why he wouldn't come home,
Yeah.
right? The war's been over.
Yeah.
So when she finds him in the fog, he's wearing fatigues and he's got his army issued duffel bag. So it's not even like he's changed clothes and he's been somewhere else or he's been recovering somewhere, like this is a man coming straight from the war, and there's such deep sadness and profound loss in his eyes. He's obviously seen so much, and you have to wonder if he's consumed by guilt, because she's just talking about, like, why did you leave us? Like, you didn't have to go and fight this war. You abandoned us. And, I think he's struggling with the time that he is in the film that he made that choice. And I think there's a scene where he talks to Anne, the child, and it's never shown. It's just sort of talked about in the past as the two of them had a conversation. And I think when you rewatch it after knowing that everybody's dead,
Oh yeah,
it's
because he
like,
has that whole dialogue. Is like, are you gonna tell me what happened that day?
yeah, exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
I think he knows that she killed them all and that they're all there dead together. And I think he was trying to find her and discovering that they're all dead, it just seemed like he's falling out of love with her in that moment, or he's consumed by his own guilt. And then I think too, yeah, that feeling of being pulled back to where he died. He talks about how he can't stay there, he has to return to the front
Yeah.
line.
Ultimately, I do believe that he's dead because enough of these facts kind of or thoughts point towards it. But it is fun
Yeah,
that we
and
don't quite know.
yeah, it's interesting to think about, and I do like that we don't 100% know why he leaves. He's only home for what seems like a couple of days before he leaves again, and it's really hard to see him leave. But what's interesting is nothing really, him being there doesn't change anything,
Oh.
and him leaving doesn't really change anything.
No, and
They are truly stuck in a limbo of sorts in that house.
Mrs. Mills has a really interesting reaction when he comes home.
Oh, I know. I watched that scene twice, searching her face, trying to figure out like what is that?
Because
What's happening to
it
her?
almost felt like a this is gonna speed up our progress.
Well, and you know what? Now it feels like that, but watching it, not knowing what's going to happen, it almost seems like he's interrupting maybe a huge gaslighting campaign that
Yes,
she. So
yes,
I just to be able to act on that level where you can, and we're talking small micro expressions.
yeah.
This is a movie
It's just
where
like a twitch of the eyebrow. Like every actor in this movie has such incredible self restraint and control.
yes, this is a
Mm,
movie of restraint. You
yes.
know, like the restraint in this film is what makes it scarier and more compelling and makes the whole thing feel like an enigma, not one that you can't puzzle out to an extent, but it all adds to the chill of it, and the deep confusion and the terror are sort of like linked, and that's what the characters are going through as well.
And then just Nicole Kidman's performance, like
Oh,
I have to say it was
so
it's
good.
so interesting to see her range because
Mm.
literally this same week that we watched the others, we watched Practical Magic, and
Oh,
she is
one of my other favorite October movies. I have to watch Practical Magic,
she's such a
every year.
different character in that movie,
Yeah, she's like a
and
siren sex symbol.
yeah, but both roles feel organic and true to what she's doing because she's a very good actor.
I know, she's excellent, and I think it took people a while to come around to that because she's so hot that I feel like throughout our childhood, that maybe she was just seen as just like a pretty girl who does girl movies.
But then, like, and now she has a whole new fan base because of those AMC commercials at
Oh,
the theater.
yeah.
But yet she's still turning out really interesting, strong performances, allowing herself to work with in really small indie films at times, and she's just making interesting choices.
Yeah, she's always been very committed to indie films and art films, and she really feels like a director's actor,
Yeah, or
you
even
know?
something as simple as when she was in Being the Ricardos. She is. I forgot that she's not Lucille Ball in that movie.
Yes, she's a movie that's very mid. She is incredible in it. I love her in that movie.
Her and Bardem are great in that movie, but they're just great in anything. But
Yes, I agree. Um,
all right,
I
I was going to say before we start wrapping up, I was going to ask if you had anything else in your notes because I just want to be aware of time for you.
yes, yeah, I know. I was just looking at my notes too. I guess I just want to go back to like how incredible that final scene is with
Yes.
the seance. It's my favorite scene in the movie. I think it's what makes it. And I every time I watch it, it makes me cry, and it like really, really hit me this time. I think because I am thinking about my loved ones who have passed recently, and feeling connected to them, and there's this, the people conducting the seance are trying to tell the kids like what happened, and the kids are having to hear that they're dead for the first time, and they're just shouting like we're not dead over and
Hmm.
over in this way that is so, it's scary because it's a cacophony, but it's just so, it's tender and it's tragic, and it is just I think it's a heart-wrenching.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is, the moments in the following moments after the seance, you're with Nicole Kidman holding her children and telling them what happened. And there's this incredible shot of the three of them, like this triangle. There's so many threes in the movies, the three servants, the three family members, the others, the Holy Trinity, because religion is so much a part of the movie. Yeah, you see this little unit together, and you feel she did this horrible, tragic thing, but she loves them still. It's very complex, and I just think it speaks to, like, the nuances of life and the complexities of life and the tragedy of grief and the way that, yeah, you do insane things, or you don't act like yourself when you're grieving, and, I think that really hit me the hardest this time, and I don't know if it would be good for everybody who's grieving because it all hits us all in a weird way, but I I was very moved additionally, having watched this after going through a lot in the last year, and I would encourage people to maybe try it and see if it, makes them feel a little comforted, because it definitely made me feel a little more comforted with my own grief. At
One
least I'm not killing all my loved ones.
exactly. There's silver lining. But no, you saying that though makes me think of like just this interesting theme throughout the film of being truthful to yourself. Throughout this entire film,
Mm.
Nicole Kidman is constantly getting on the case of her daughter for,
Mm.
telling her, it's like, why aren't you telling me the truth? Why aren't you being honest? And the daughter is, throughout this entire film, the
Mm.
person who's not being honest is her.
Yeah, she's trying to reach back to that day all the time. She knows something happened,
Hmm.
and, that's when Nicole Kidman, she's always saying, "My daughter comes up with these fantastical stories, and I don't like fantastical stories," and yet, here she is teaching them, about the Bible in several scenes, and always talking about, what happens to bad little children
Oh,
um, you
it's
know who don't stand by Christ. Don't deny Christ or you'll be sent to purgatory.
the
You
best
know, sh
comedy beat came from that purgatory thing when Anna's like, purgatory's for kids who haven't been baptized, and Nicole Kidman just drops her jaw, and then it cuts on that. It's just the funniest thing
Yeah.
because
No,
it's a very much the audacity of this child.
yeah, she's like, "Well, you told me to study it, and I've been studying it."
Yes, she has nothing to do but study it.
Yeah, truly, because they're all being homeschooled inside this drafty old house with the curtains closed.
No, I
I think it's
love
a
it.
must-watch for the Halloween season, and, just if you're, a listener who appreciates attention to detail and, how cinema combines several different types of art forms, this is a movie that will not only thrill you with the level of attention to artistic detail and thoughtfulness to every detail, but it is also just rewarding to those who multiple viewings, and then it's also just chilling between the color palette and the fog and the candles flickering. I mean, this is like the most candle movie.
Mm.
There's so much candle in this movie.
Oh, absolutely. Candle porn through and through.
Yeah, there's just nothing better to in the Halloween season than darkness and shadows and candles flickering. That's why Gothic films, to me, it's my favorite genre of horror
It's
because
mine
it
too.
feels the most like Halloween.
Yeah, it's mine too. It's become mine over the years.
Yes.
But yeah, I was thinking about just the other day. It's like, the stuff I really respond to is Gothic films, folk horror, and if you can try to combine the two, even better.
I completely agree, because then folk horror also has sort of a Halloweeny feel to it.
Yeah, it
I
absolutely
and I
does.
and both have this, like, there's a secret, someone knows something, and this outsider is getting in the way. I love that tone. I love that story. Like, you can put that plot in any location with any characters, and I'm fucking in. I'm ready for it. I don't care how repetitive it is. It always excites me.
Some
Somebody knows something.
some tropes work. Tropes don't have
Mhm.
to be a bad thing. They can work.
No, you put a beautiful woman in a flowy nightgown and give her a candelabra or an oil lamp and have her run around a big old castle. I'm in.
I think I
I'm
found you.
in.
I think that should be your next movie. You should make. You
Yes.
should
Oh
make
God, are
one.
you kidding? I would love to make a gothic film. I was really inspired by the others. I actually directed a music video last year. This band called Vampire, who is a local, gothic new romance punk band
Mm,
here in
you're
LA.
speaking my language.
Um, they're so fun. If you like early 80s sort of like dark wave gothic
Yes.
music, yeah, it's very much that. And all of their music videos have like kind of a horror theme to it. Like their first one's Southern Gothic, their second one is very inspired by The Hunger. And then the third one I directed and I was inspired by the others. And I always wanted to make something gothic, but I don't have the funds to do so myself right now. So I was able to make I think it's a 3-minute video with some aspects of hauntings and candlesticks and flashlights and nightgowns. Um, so you, it's called Figures Bathed in Light, which is a great title.
I'm looking it up
Um,
now.
it's the title of the song. I'll send it to you, and
Please
you can
do.
yeah, you can pop it in the notes or whatever. But that's my 3-minute experimentation with gothic film through music.
Well, if you end up writing one, let me know. Give me a little notice. I'll come out to LA and help.
Thank you. Yeah, let's track down a castle.
Ooh.
Well, it's important to note in this movie actually that it was not filmed in the Channel
No,
Islands. They
it was
found a
not.
house that they wanted, but the property owners wouldn't let them film there.
Yeah, I think they shot it in Madrid.
Yeah, yeah. And the house is a real house, and some of the rooms in the movie are rooms in the house, but then they also built a whole house on a sound studio
It's
in
it
Spain.
is insane how Spanish this movie is because it doesn't feel it.
I know.
It feels English and
Feels
gothic.
English.
But yeah,
Yes.
you look at you look at the credits and there is more apostrophes above names
Yeah.
than like it feels like you're watching a giallo film.
Totally. Well, he worked really hard. He had all their props sourced from London because he didn't want stuff to look Spanish. He said there were a couple of, when they're in the actual house shooting, some of that's furniture and architecture is Spanish. And I guess I guess there in one scene there's an armoire that it was a Spanish armoire that was on the set, where they were shooting, and evidently it was also in a Buñuel film that Amenábar noticed as he was watching that Buñuel film, which I think is really funny. He was like, "Wait a second, that's the armoire in my film."
I love that. All right.
So
So
yeah, I just little fact at the end there.
I love that. So before we wrap up on this show, I try to do something called my thrill house moment. Your moment in the movie that's kind of your lock in. It could be a favorite scene. It could be the moment that you're just fully invested. If you need a minute, I can give you mine. But
Yes, please say yours first.
so mine, I was in pretty early. I'm not gonna lie, but I feel like that's also a cop out. So I will say
Oh, I mean, that's good. That speaks to how good the film
yes,
is.
like you just Nicole Kidman walking them through the house, giving the tour, explaining the rules. I love a movie where there are rules to explain because that
Me
means those
too.
rules can be broken. And I love that. It's one of my
Mm.
favorite trends. But if I had to pick one that's not the opening, I would say the scene where the kids are studying in separate rooms and she thinks she hears Nicholas crying, so she runs to him and he goes, I haven't been crying. I can't really do an English accent.
Oh,
So
that's
then
good.
runs to Anne, who also hasn't been crying, but she is still hearing it. And then it's like, oh, here's the supernatural elements.
Hmm. Right, and the crying is when they do like we were talking about. That's when it's in surround sound,
Yep, and
so
then
that it
and
feels
that's where
like you
Anne's
can
like,
hear
it's
the crying.
Victor. Yeah.
Victor. Yeah, it's funny the commentary that Amenábar does on the Criterion. He
Oh, Criterion put
complains
this out?
about Huh?
I didn't know Criterion put this out.
Put it out a year ago,
Oh, I'll be picking that up.
and it blew me away. I was like, finally, I am being vindicated for how long I've talked about this film being a classic.
Ooh.
Yes, I have it on every format. I have the tape that I bought when it got released. I have the DVD that I got later on, and then when the Criterion came out, I got the Blu-ray because I have yet to invest in a 4K TV or player. Do you
Mm.
have 4K?
Yes.
Very good. Someday,
I try to jump on all the home video trends when they come out.
quickly. Does that mean that, well, we're too young for having to buy a Laserdisc player ourselves,
No,
but
I'm looking for one though, just because I want to have one.
well, Laserdiscs look awesome.
Yeah, they do. But right now the three formats that I run are VHS, DVD, Blu. Oh, so I guess four formats: VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, and then I do have some stuff digital only that is mostly just movies that you can't own in any other fashion. So I found ways to get them.
Of course. No, I'm pro finding ways to get things. Gosh, it's so funny. I'm thinking about what was the moment I locked in because I love this movie so much, and
It could even just be a favorite scene.
I know every time I watch it, I'm like, this is a perfect film, tip to tail. There are no problems. Um, I do really love when she starts running around the house with a shotgun and an oil
Oh,
lamp. I think it's so fucking
yes.
cool. I think she looks amazing. Um, there's this really scary scene where it's the second time she grabs it's the second time she grabs the shotgun and the first time she's holding the oil lamp, and she's going down the stairs because she hears piano music and she knows the kids are in bed. And she thinks that when she's heard piano music before, it's because the kids are fucking around, and she has, blamed them for
Hmm.
fucking around with the piano, and she's told the servants the kids can't be on the piano. Well, this is when we're learning that the others, and now then we find out the living, breathing flesh husband is a piano composer. And so she goes into the piano room and she walks in and the door closes behind her, and she sees that the cover on the piano keys is open instead of closed the way she keeps it. And she goes over, she closes the lid to the piano, there's a key, she locks it. She she i I feel like you see the key, her take the key with her.
Yeah, she
But
does.
yeah, and she goes to, oh, and the door opens even though she closes it. And she goes out the door, and then she like messes with the door to be like, why is this opening and closing when I'm not doing it? And then suddenly it slams in her face, and it's this big glorious moment because the movie is mixed very quietly,
Yes,
and the
it is.
slam is intense, and there's a burst of music which you don't, like what you talked about, you don't get a ton of music. There's a theme that is woven throughout, but you don't get a lot of music, and there's not a lot of those jarring sort of jump scare music moments in this film, which is what I like about it. And she is thrown to the floor. The gun flies out of her hand. She is yelling for Mrs. Mills. Somebody is in the house. Somebody is messing with us. And she gets the door open again, and the piano lid is up again.
Hmm.
And it's like, all right, well, this is not the children. There is a ghost. Something is happening to her. And that's just such a great moment, and it's a big turning point in the film because she just stops kind of giving her kids a hard time. And it's like where she's really getting closer to facing what happened, but we still, as the audience, we don't know. The stakes are getting so much higher in this moment.
Yeah. Hmm. I'm excited to rewatch this movie already. I loved this
You
movie.
will love it. There's just so many things. There's things I noticed this time. There's scenes where Nicole Kidman is sleeping, where the children are sleeping, and they're, the camera is upright, and the faces are like flush against the bed, and they look dead. It emulates that postmortem photography, and there's these scenes where they look extra washed out or extra pale. That I know they're doing more makeup or color grading or whatever, and the way that they look like corpses in certain scenes really shocked me this time because I was like, God, he is planting the seeds in almost every single scene, but it is not heavy-handed and it's not obvious. It's just such a beautiful work of art. I want everybody to love this film. I think it's so special.
I think that is the best note to end on.
Well, thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk so passionately about it.
Of
I'm
course.
just thrilled that you loved it and that it'll be a new October favorite in your rotation, I hope.
And I thank you for coming on and for hanging out with me for a little while and talking about movies. So before we wrap up, where can people find you?
Yes, I'm most active on Instagram, so you can follow me there at LTB Comedy. And It's Always Halloween is on every podcast platform. Start listening from the first episode. Listen in chronological order. That'll be the most rewarding. Videotech, like I said, is in Los Angeles. Video Visions is once a month, the last Thursday of the month. So come on down to that. And yeah, I'm on various podcasts, many different types of film podcasts, and then lots of different like horror and Halloween podcasts in addition to doing stand-up. So people
Perfect.
can listen to me across the airwaves, many places.
And you've always got a spot on this show, and I appreciate you hanging out with me.
Thank you. I know we're already in talks. There's already another movie that we've been talking about doing, so I'm definitely going to be back.
Was that Clueless?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. At this point, I have seen Clueless, so I am breaking my shameless rule. Well, I watched it.
We can
go
in a different direction.
Well, no, I'm down to do it because it's
Okay.
a movie that I think needs to be dissected, and I'm excited to do that. At this point, everyone listening to this should know where to find me. I'm Michael_Vyers or Shameless Picture Show on pretty much every platform. I do physical media reviews on TikTok for some reason, and I talk about aspect ratios more than anyone else on that platform. Also, I haven't announced this yet to the show, but I need accountability to make sure that I follow through with it. Next year is the 10-year anniversary of the Shameless Picture Show. I've been doing this for a decade, and I have decided that I'm going to be compiling a book. I am going to be writing a book.
Cool. Congrats.
Thank you. The conceit of it is getting people, friends of mine, and other literary film people together and having them write about a movie that was once on their shame list that made an impact on them. The book was going to be called What's on Your Shame List? And that's
Brilliant.
the rough idea right now.
I love that. Oh my God. Now I'm going to be thinking about what mine would be.
Well, I was going to reach out to you anyways, see if you had interest, but
Yes, I just invited myself. That's what just happened.
all right, everyone, thank you all for listening, and you can catch us next time. Shame time, shame place, Shameless Picture Show.
The Shameless Picture Show is a proud member of the Cinepunch Podcast Network. The show is recorded in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and is hosted and produced by Michael Vyers. The show is created by Michael Vyers and Nick Richards. The Shameless Picture Show is edited by Austin Proctor of the Frightmares podcast. Amanda Vyers is the show's graphic designer and a big help behind the scenes. Our theme music was composed by Austin Proctor with narration by Nick Richards. The end credit music you're currently enjoying was generously provided to us by the band 10 Speed. And an extra special thank you to all our Patreon supporters and to our generous sponsors. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and directly at Cinepunch.com.